an agreement to have Bahamar completed VAT-free, hostility from the PLP ranks towards the lead organizer of an activist group, and the government optimistic about its crime-fighting efforts. We've got these stories and others. I'm your host, Nico Scavella, and this is the Tribune's Top 5. Prime Minister Perry Christie this week said former Attorney General Alfred Sears has been given a fair shot to lead the Progressive Liberal Party, amidst concerns that the party's late convention may negatively impact the change of its leadership so close to the next general election. However, Mr. Christie said Mr. Sears' challenge to his leadership of the PLP raises constitutional issues since his rival is not a member of Parliament. Mr. Sears announced his intention to challenge Mr. Christie for leadership of the PLP in August of last year, ensuring that Mr. Christie will face the first challenge to his leadership since National Security Minister Dr. Bernard Nottage and attorney Paul Moss faced him in 2009. The PLP's convention will be held in the final week of this month. It was postponed several times, most recently from November, because the staging of a major political event so soon after the passage of Hurricane Matthew was a concern to some members of the party. Some have criticized the PLP for the convention's postponement, believing it encourages members to rubber stamp Mr. Christie as leader out of fear that choosing a new leader now would bring too much disruption to a party that plans to portray itself this year as the only stable party in the country. When asked if the January convention is fair to his challenger, Mr. Christie said, and I quote, "I know he's done a lot of work. I know he's covered a lot of areas. I know he's called people over and over again, so he's had a fair opportunity to sell himself and make his case," end quote. Of Mr. Sears' absence from Parliament, Mr. Christie said, and I quote, "I have a view as to how people react to these things. I have a view as to the constitutional implications if someone tries to run when they're not even a member of Parliament. The Constitution clearly governs the process and doesn't qualify as a member of Parliament to be a leader in the House of Assembly. The fact of the matter is he's tried to explain it. I have not commented at all on his candidacy. I will in fact be engaged in the coming week before the convention to ensure that I give people the benefit of knowing who I am and knowing what I stand for, lest there be some doubt as to who I am and what I stand for," end quote. When contacted by the Tribune, however, Mr. Sears insisted his challenge raises no constitutional concerns, charging that his thorough perusal of the party's constitution indicates nothing that would prevent him from contesting the party's leadership. As for his bid to unseat Mr. Christie, Mr. Sears said, and I quote, "The preparations have been going better than I could ever imagine. It's been very encouraging," end quote. Despite a bloody end to 2016 and a similar start to 2017, National Security Minister Dr. Bernard Nottage this week said the Progressive Liberal Party has the best policies to fight crime and improve people's lives, stressing that last year's decrease in murders compared to the previous year, from a record 146 in 2015 to 113, was due to strong police work and urban renewal. Dr. Nottage said officials cannot be satisfied because there is still more work to be done in order to combat violent crime. Dr. Nottage's comments come after the country recorded 3 murders within the first 5 days of the year. Dr. Nottage may have been referring to the government's broad policies, however his comments came after he was asked by the Tribune to reflect on how crime and the Christie administration's efforts to combat it should weigh on people's minds in an election year. In opposition, the PLP infamously erected billboards around New Providence, emphasizing the number of murders that took place during the Ingram administration, which was in office at the time. The billboards declared that under 5 years of the Free National Movement there had been more than 490 murders. According to the Tribune's records, there have been over 570 murders since the Christie administration came to power in May 2012, with promises to solve the problem. However, killings decreased last year compared to 2015, which saw a record 146 homicides. There were 113 homicides in 2016, according to the Tribune's records, a 22.7% decrease year on year. The murder rate increased significantly in the final quarter of 2016 after a quieter period in the summer raised hope that the country would record its lowest number of murders since 2010, the last time the murder tally failed to reach the 3-figure mark. Instead, 2016's tally was the lowest since 2012, when 111 people were killed. November and December were the bloodiest months of last year, with 14 and 15 murders respectively. Dr. Nottage, who made his comments on the sidelines of the New Year's Day Junkanoo parade, said 2016's decrease was a result of policing strategies and help from the public. He said, and I quote, "It's not a natural ebb and flow. It's a mixture of strategies introduced by the police force and due to the assistance we've gotten from the public and urban renewal police officers who concentrate on community policing. I am pleased with the performance of the Royal Bahamas Police Force with respect to fighting crime. Crime decreased significantly through the course of last year, but I'm not satisfied. So long as we have crime, particularly violent crime, we cannot be satisfied because there's lots of work to do," end quote. PLP Chairman Bradley Roberts this week suggested that We March Bahamas lead organizer Bernard Henfield get his head examined for alleging that the PLP recruited gang leaders to convince the streets to march with the party on Majority Rule Day instead of the activist group.
In an interview with the Tribune, Mr. Roberts also implied that the PLP will not accept Mr. Henfield's invitation for the two groups to march together for a common loftier goal. We March Bahamas and the PLP have conflicting marches planned for next Tuesday, which is Majority Rule Day. We March Bahamas plans to march from the Clifford Park, Western Esplanade areas along Bay Street to Pompey Square at 10 a.m. on that day. Meanwhile, Mr. Roberts has confirmed that the PLP will march at 7 a.m. from Windsor Park, ending at the Southern Recreation Grounds on Market Street. Earlier this week, in a Facebook post, Mr. Henfield claimed that he was approached by two gang leaders who allegedly told him they were asked to get persons to march with the PLP instead of We March Bahamas. He also posted an open letter to Mr. Roberts suggesting that the two groups march side by side from Clifford Park to Bay Street. Mr. Henfield wrote that his group is certain Mr. Roberts would put country over party politics and accept the invitation to march together for a common loftier goal. However, when contacted, Mr. Roberts said he never received the letter from Mr. Henfield and explained that there were no changes in the PLP's original plan to march. He also said Mr. Henfield needs to have his head examined while denying the PLP is associated or affiliated with any gangs. Mr. Roberts said, and I quote, "That is utter rubbish. We did not pay anyone, we did not recruit any gang members. If Mr. Henfield was approached by gangsters, then maybe they are his people and he knows them. Maybe he can identify them to police or whatever, but they were not our people. As far as the march is concerned, nothing has changed. I did not get a letter from Mr. Henfield asking us to join the march, but the march is open to all Bahamians. We will not be wearing any political colors, and therefore we cannot join a program of wearing black and whose goals and objectives continue to drift." End quote. We March Bahamas previously staged a massive protest on November 25, 2016, where more than 1,000 people marched from Arawak Key to downtown Nassau. A large group of protesters also occupied Rawson Square for 12 hours as part of the demonstration against the government and the status quo. Democratic National Alliance leader Branville McCartney this week said he was unaware of any coalition between his party and Long Island MP Loretta Butler Turner or the 6 other rebel Free National Movement members of Parliament. In an interview with the Tribune, Mr. McCartney said there is no plan at this stage to form a coalition between the two groups. However, Mr. McCartney noted that he has no difficulties with a coalition being formed. Nonetheless, Mr. McCartney reiterated previous comments from DNA Deputy Leader Chris Mortimer, saying if anyone wants to become a member of the DNA or a candidate, they would have to apply through the party's candidates committee and receive unanimous approval. On Wednesday, in an interview on Hot 91.7 FM's Morning Madhouse with host C Note, Mrs. Butler Turner announced that she is forming a very powerful and bold coalition with Mr. McCartney and the DNA that will, quote, change the direction of the country. The official opposition leader also said the details of the coalition would be announced very soon. When contacted for a response, however, Mr. McCartney said, and I quote, "There is no plan to absorb anyone in the DNA. There is no plan at this stage that I am aware of for a coalition. The only conversation we had was about my becoming a senator. Right now, the DNA is waiting for this election and how we will form the next government. With regards to the Fantastic Seven or the Rebel Seven, they are still with the FNM. They are still members of the Free National Movement. The DNA is not with the FNM. We are completely different. So at this point, there is no arrangement. There is no plan." End quote. Last month, after ousting FNM leader Dr. Hubert Minnis as leader of the official opposition in Parliament and obtaining the position, Mrs. Butler Turner appointed Mr. McCartney as leader of opposition business in the Senate. At the time, Mrs. Butler Turner said the move was evidence that her team was willing to put the Bahamian people first to move forward to defeat the governing Progressive Liberal Party. Announcing the decision at the time, she insisted that she and the 6 FNM MPs who support her have not joined the DNA, but were working together for a common good. Mrs. Butler Turner has had her nomination for Long Island revoked from the FNM as a result of her actions. She has indicated that she has no plans to abandon the constituency, but has not said if she will run independent or with another party. She, along with the 6 other rebel MPs, face expulsion, suspension, or a fine from the party.
The government was this week urged to divulge the full cost of the Bahamian people of its Bahar Mar agreement after evidence emerged to show that its construction completion is totally bat-free.
Peter Turnquest, the FNM's deputy leader, said the government could be foregoing up to $60 million in value-added tax revenues after an email from the project's general contractor suggested the tax break had been extended to all companies and suppliers working on the completion. A China Construction America email headline exemption of VAT and issued this week said all companies working on Bahar Mar's completion had been granted a full waiver from payment of the 7.5% levy. The email sent by Sayao Shen of CCA Bahamas Commercial Department said, and I quote, "It's agreed with the government that the subcontractors and suppliers of CCA Bahamas shall be entitled to have the benefit of a full exemption from the payment of value-added tax for works carried out on the Bahar Mar project." End quote. having effectively confirmed that the VAT waiver covers all Bahamar-related construction activity and includes all its subcontractors and suppliers, Bahamian and foreign. The CCA email suggests that they can also recover the taxes paid on bills and submitted by their own service providers and suppliers. The CCA email's content effectively suggests that all subcontractors, suppliers, and service providers working on Bahamar will receive zero-rated treatment on all their costs and invoices. This means they, together with CCA, will be able to reclaim or not pay all input VAT while also avoiding the 7.5% levy on their outputs. Tribune Business was sent the CCA email by a well-known source who had obtained the document from one of the Bahamian contractors who received it. Its contents were said to be provoking outrage among Bahamians, upset that tax breaks are being granted to the Chinese when the same are not being made available to local businesses and consumers, after the email was widely circulated on social media. However, a government source intimately familiar with the Bahamar Agreement said it was not unusual for subcontractors working on major foreign direct investment projects to enjoy the same tax incentives as the main contractor. Speaking on condition of anonymity, they added that this had been a standard practice under numerous heads of agreement for resort and real estate-based developments, as subcontractors were legally treated as the general contractor. Implying that too much was being read into the CCA email's contents, the government source said some of the concerns and confusion were arising because the Bahamar Agreement was the first major investment deal to take effect since VAT's implementation on January 1st, 2015.
Want to get in on the discussion? Well, here's how you can. Just log on to our website, www.tribune242.com, like us on Facebook, Tribune News Network, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Tribune242, or send us a tweet at Tribune242.